Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. This is Mujeeb Kazi, and you're watching Dallas Roundup on TV I-95 from the studio of Dallas Fort Worth. I'm an absolute honor and privilege to have such an accomplished personality with us today, Dr. Amer Shakil. I'm going to take a few moments of time and introduce because he is our one of those unsung heroes who work extensively behind the scene, but hardly we get to see them on the mainstream. So, Dr. Saab, allow me to introduce you in length because I know you're very humble and, mashallah, your contribution as an expat, as an American citizen, is tremendous, and I think that does require a recognition. Currently, Dr. Saab serves as Executive Vice President for Wellness and Care Group of Texas, Executive Vice President for Clinical Affairs, Family Cares, and the Urgent Care of Texas. Dr. Shakil is a highly accomplished physician. He is the president of Texas Academy of Family Physician and holds a Dr. Bill Ross Professorship at Family Practice, Department of Family and Community Medicine, UT Southwestern Medical Center here in Dallas, Texas. Dr. Amer Shakil is a chairman of board of directors, then Dallas Muslim Medical Alliance, CFO for the Premier Wellness Clinic, PLLC. He also serves as chairman at the North Texas Islamic Council, an umbrella organization for over 70 local faith-based and humanitarian organizations in North Texas area. Serves as the president of the board at the Denton Muslim Cemetery. He is a founder and director of faith-based community Free Clinic in Richardson, Texas, where he has been providing care for underserved and uninsured patients for the last 20 years. In addition, he helped in establishing over 10 such clinics in the DFW and metropolitan surrounding areas. He has earned his bachelor degree and bachelor degree in surgery from Rawalpindi Medical College, University, Pakistan, and doctorate from the Education Commission on Foreign Medical Graduates in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He also has a Master of Business Administration in Healthcare Organization Leadership. He received this degree with distinction from the University of Texas here in Dallas also. With nearly 22 years of experience in healthcare, education, administration, clinical training, and research in family violence, Dr. Shakil's research is focused on development on testing shorter but equally effective clinical screening tools for detecting family violence in primary care setting. His work has been recognized internationally. In 2019, his work in development of pediatric HITSS receives Pearl Award by North American Primary Care Research Group. Pearl is awarded to the top research studies presented at the NAPCRG annual meeting that will impact clinical practice. His research was also recognized as honorable nomination by Society Office of Family Medicine. It's an absolute pleasure, Dr. Sir. Welcome to the show.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much for such a kind introduction. Appreciate that.
Dr. Saab, the reason I wanted to have a complete background in length, mashallah, you're one of those unsung heroes of our community who give so much back to our great country that we choose as to be as our home. And you have served and worked diligently. Obviously, working with so many organizations requires a lot of courage, a lot of time, and especially once you have so much on your plate. So I'm going to talk about starting off with our North Texas Islamic Council. What is this? What is the motivation behind this organization?
Yeah, so Alhamdulillah, Dallas has been a growing place for for a while actually. Since I think 20 plus year we moved here and it's still growing and continue to grow, and that brings also a growth of our community. And Alhamdulillah, we have so many masajids, so many organizations here, and we felt the need almost 10 years ago or so that we should have at least a platform where these organizations can come together and discuss and can learn from each other and can work together. It's not organization in a sense that people are must be members, so it's all voluntary. But we have done, the organization has done, alhamdulillah, a lot of great work in the past. We have held interfaith dialogues regularly. We have conducted uh, coordination between different masajid, or unfortunately if there is a dispute, then we come into play also. And this year, I think that one of the biggest accomplishment we did was that we have created a DFWDU COVID expert panel. And we regularly release those guidelines for our community. Specifically, initially, we had to close down all the massages, so we had to create a guideline how to keep them closed, and how to, if you want to open them, how to do it, and how to clean, how to do social distancing. And alhamdulillah, that was not only adopted in our metroplex, but it was adopted in Houston, in Atlanta, and locally, church group had also adopted our guidelines. So so we do activities like that, whatever the community needs at that time. And I think it's a good forum where organizations can come and talk about common things. And out of that, we created council of imams. We have so many masajid here, almost more than 40 plus masajid and musallas. And then we also created masajid amir group, again, to kind of have a dialogue and learn from each other, and can talk about common issues.
So primarily, this is all voluntary. Organization can join and leave if they choose to, and but the services and the guideline that you provide is absolutely voluntary as well. And obviously, there's a huge amount of time and research goes behind it, because in times like COVID, shutting the masajid down, or in some cases, giving them SOPs to the point which is safer for our congregation, at the same time
Mm.
following the local guidelines. Um, the question comes about, in terms of mediation and arbitration. Have you have had any cases of those? Because the community in Dallas Fort Worth is growing extensively, and we understand that issues and the a dispute do arise. And at that time, what kind
Mhm.
of support and the services that NT can provide?
Yes, we have. And, that's one of the historically, North Texas Islamic Council has played that role. Uh, when I took over as a chair 2 years ago, actually, one of the first thing I dealt with was there was a long-standing dispute among two organizations. And alhamdulillah, we and Tech board worked on it. It took us some time, but we were able to resolve. And when the community is growing, when the organizations are growing, this is common. So, and it's not necessarily somebody's done worse than the other. Our job is to come in and to mediate. And we live in a state. Texas state is by default is an arbitration state. So we try to mediate, and try to prevent organizations spending their money on legal fees. And actually, I NTIC also worked with, there is the Muslim Attorney Council, which is have over 250 attorneys in that. So we have created a joint program with them, which we still finalizing the plans and how to implement it. And they are wanted to provide services if the community, especially if the organizations need them.
So, in terms of arbitration, NTIC, I understand that provides only facilitation tools basically to the
Mhm.
organizations, and refer them to expert in the field. Is there any fee that NTIC charges from these Islamic organizations?
No, we don't have any fee for service, but we have a membership fee, and that's also voluntary. We want people to pay, make this annual membership fee, but there is no fee for the service.
Going towards the Imams Councils, what kind of benefit do you see that we have out there from the Imams Council, other than having a collaboration and coordination?
So again, Alhamdulillah, as the community grew, we actually, Dallas has been fortunate. We have really some national and international caliber scholars here. And I'm part of their council as the chair of the NTIC, and so I have that privilege. So again, that's a bridge building, or when we were implementing these guidelines for COVID-19, obviously imams were integral. Their input is integral, and to include them in the process is integral. So I think it is important to have both the religious perspective, and in this particular case, medical perspective, and Antic brings in the administrative background to what how we're going to execute it, how we're going to implement it. So all of those things we bring together. So being part of the Imams Council as the chair of Antic is, they can communicate with us, or if they feel their issues, most imams are employees, so there are also, sometimes there is confusion or issue arise from that. So we try to mediate. Alhamdulillah, Dallas has been doing good, so we haven't had any problem. But things can happen, when there is a, or when there's so many organizations exist.
Absolutely. Obviously, once all organizations come together under one umbrella, and obviously the number of membership goes up, and at the same time, your voice becomes, multiplied by 72 times versus just one organization. Absolutely, and a fantastic a platform for organization to utilize. Speaking of
Exactly.
imams, I was reading a book by Jeffrey Lang, and you may have come across, and he states that. About 100 years ago, when the Ottoman empires, when the at the end of the Ottoman empires, most people moved to New York, and they established about 200 masajid just in the city of New York. Within the span of 100 years, all those masajid are gone, virtually non-existing. There's maybe one or two masajid existing after 1 year. Second and third and first generation, they didn't work on the first and the second generation, and now we see virtually the entire two, second, third generations. You may find the names, Muslim name here and there,
Hmm.
but though that generation has completely vanished. Is that a concern that our imams share at when you meet with them, especially when you meet the Amir's council or the Imam
Hmm.
council? Is that a concern? If that is one, then what are we doing about it?
It's definitely a concern, not only for moms, but community leaders and people who are like us. It's unfortunately it is true, and it has similar thing happened when Ford company brought a lot of Syrian where folks to work in their companies early 1900s, and same thing happened in Michigan area. So building masajid is only the first step. I you probably heard this from me before. I always say that we have built the masajid. Let's go to the next step. This is my personal opinion, and based on my experience and learning from the history, as you mentioned, is that building masajid is not enough. We are at a stage in America which is a very critical stage. We need to convert these masajid into institutions, and we need to start building places where the younger generation is comfortable, such as community centers, places for them to hang out. Masajid, with we have grand masajid here, and they're alhamdulillah they're very good, but they're still considered masajid or masjid or place of worship, which is different than for a teenager who's struggling in a society which is has kind of totally different what you're trying to teach him or her at home. They need to have a space. We must provide them a space. And then another thing is that we need to bring more young blood into our organizations. Until unless we're ready to pass the baton and train them, it can same thing can happen. Islam was never built on bricks and mortar. That will never work. The prophet's own mosque, the first time somebody lit a lamp was years after it was built. And so it is not needed. Our faith teaches us that you know entire earth is place for worship. So I'm not build against building masajid. I built, one and maybe part of a lot of them. But I'm just saying we gotta move on from building masajid brick and mortar for actually the purpose of it, like the mosque of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It was an institution where everything started. And again, we have really some high caliber folks in Dallas, and we need to take that advantage and convert these buildings into institutions. Then we have some chances to survive in this melting pot.
You have basically just taken the words out of my mouth, and I'm absolutely thrilled that you're thinking on those lines that are much needed. And I'm pretty sure that you'll be discussing that with the Imams Council because they are our leaders. Coming back to the Jeffrey Lang's analysis, he said, well, unfortunately, people who are immigrant, they come with the baggage. And the baggage is that right now you see the masajid are primarily run by uncles. And those uncles need to trust the young generations and pass on the baton so they can they will make mistakes, but that's the whole point. Let them make a mistake and then they can rectify themselves, but trust them. Trust is more important. I'm going to move on to the next subject that you cover, and obviously it's related to your practice as well. A pandemic is one thing, and our teenagers facing challenges, counseling. So I'm assuming that because of the COVID-19 and the pandemic and the last 4 years that we have lived through, I'm sure the number of cases in terms of family violence or related to that may have gone up. What has been your experience on that? And do you have any advice for the people who are watching us around the world?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually true, unfortunately, around the world, that the cases of domestic violence, family violence has taken a new hike. People are at home, and there are new nuances into this, which I'll touch in a minute. But just because people are at home and they're frustrated, they can't get out. Think about teenagers. They don't want to sit at home, and now they can go. And we are also seeing a lot of depression, and there is actually a syndrome people are talking about called COVID isolation syndrome. Which there are a lot of parents who are single parents, especially if they are single mothers, and the children at home, and it's affecting a lot of people. And other nuances which were reported in literature are that in many cases the couple is working in a different time schedule, so they not necessarily were home at the same time, and now they're at home, both parents are home at the same time, and one is not agreeing with the other one. So there are some nuances, but the sad part is just the abuse has gone up across the spectrum. And unfortunately, family violence is such a thing that it doesn't respect any religion or cultural or economic. It's all across the spectrum. So that is true. We have seen more cases, and but we just our research shows that the best way to approach this is obviously counseling and supporting the family. And unfortunately, sometimes when if it's really bad, then you advise them to be separated. But that's the last thing we ever, especially physicians don't advise that. That's not our. We there to help make sure that the parent, a lot of times the counseling, the baggage thing you mentioned is that is there is some truth to that. But I have 20 years of worth of research in this area, and this is across, as I said earlier, it cut across all religious spectrum or socioeconomic status.
Well, very well said. I'm going to digress a little bit. We are into the last 5 minutes of our program, and because you work with the humanitarian organizations, and I know that you're from Pakistan, but your wife is from Kashmir, and the situation in Kashmir has been drastically changed after the August 5th episode of 2019. People in the region, under the occupation of Indian forces, still living through what I call it a living hell, basically. And people outside of Kashmir don't know much about it. I do want to have your opinion about, what is your take on what do you think what is the doable solution for the issue of Kashmir, if there is any?
Well, first of all, I think the Kashmir issue is not just necessarily an issue of Pakistan and India only. It has been through, United Nations Charter. United Nations has resolutions on this. It's very well known, and it is should be, and according to United Nations, recommendation, there should be, Kashmiris should have the right to decide, and they should have the right to decide whatever they want to decide. You know, right now it's two countries trying to decide for them, and I think that is not necessarily the right solution. Now what India has done is that is kind of a very backward step, because India was known as to be the world's largest democracy, and they were doing very well. But steps like this is, I think, in a long run hurt their own image, because they claim that they are the biggest democracy in the world. And in democracy, you don't do this. You got to listen to people, listen to what they want. And I'm not a politician or a leader in that regard, but I think if the Kashmiris have the right to decide what they want. And if Pakistan and India really want, make Kashmiri happy, uh, they should compete in making part of Kashmir they have the best part of the world. Let's see. Then that would be some challenge, isn't it? Can they make that part they administer, either both of them? The best part in the world, be it the trading thing, be it whatever, the education system. Can they provide that? Both countries, they claim that. So Kashmiris are in between. There are two countries, and I think they have the right to decide, and that should be given to them.
Well, the Prime Minister of Pakistan has alluded to that in his speech on February 5th of this year, that he would support the independence of Kashmir. But on the other hand, India has made it a part of their, union without the will of the people of Kashmir, and they're being deprived from the, a symbolic autonomous status that they have been enjoying for the last 72 years. They have sacrificed over 100,000 lives, and now they are bringing in, non-Kashmiris to change the demography in the region. So basically, what's happening on the ground is that the people from India can go in Kashmir and buy the property, but from Pakistani side, they cannot go and buy the property in South Kashmir, and you are the primary example of that.
Yeah, I mean, my wife can, her family, I mean, anybody who's from Kashmir, they're free to buy property in Pakistan. I personally can't buy, inch or whatever you want to call it, a piece of land in Kashmir, because if Pakistan had allowed that, by this time in 70 year, Pakistani would have bought the whole thing. So, I think that was a wise decision, and we need to stick to that, because we do firmly believe that the Kashmir belong to Kashmiris. Okay, and those are the people who should decide. Now, if we learn from history, oppression doesn't work. If that was the case, how come India got liberated from British, occupation? So it's not the solution. If India, was liberated after 200 plus years of rule, 300 years of rule, if the people really want to their liberation, they will sacrifice. Okay, but that is not the right approach. You cannot oppress any nation, no matter who it is, be it in Kashmir or be it in Burma or anywhere, or it should not be done.
Absolutely, and we are into the last 1 minute of our time. I would ask you to give advice to our youth. How can they become productive members of the society while living here in United States, and alongside achieving their own goals, whether it's economic viability or they're in pursuit of any other career that they are into it, how they can pay back and contribute towards the community that we live in?
I'm glad that you asked that question. The data and the research on teenagers is actually pretty extensive in America. And you would be surprised. The research shows that they are actually the most productive segment of the society. They are working and they usually do 1 to 2 jobs. It may be, a small job, maybe, like working in the restaurant or something, but they're working, their hours are a lot, and they're still able to study. So our kids, they're Muslim but they're still Americans, and they're American teenagers, so we have to parent first realize that part. Okay, they're not the Pakistani or whatever you're from, or Kashmiri teenagers. They're American teenagers. Yes, they're Muslims, but so my message to them is that I strongly believe in their energy and I trust them, and I think they can achieve both things. They can achieve the religious achievements, and then they should mean understanding of the religion, and at the same time they must they must do their part in learning all the sciences, whichever field they want, but they should be the best in that field. That's what our religion teaches. We need, now we don't only need doctors, by the way. I'm just, the Desi family, so I'm trying to put that in there. We need the engineers and the computer guys and people in politics and people in every single field. And I think our kids are fully capable. I actually want to give advice to parents, that let them be the teenager also,
Mhm.
and trust them, and inshallah they will do fine. And that one thing, last thing I would say for both parents and the teenagers, for parents to find mentors for their kids, and for teenagers and young ones, find mentors for yourself. Because that's where, a person who has seen life, who is, you mentioned our free clinics. The big service is not only seeing patients.
Mhm.
Actually, one of the biggest service we do, which I'm very proud of, is mentorship. Okay, and that's what we need to do as a parent.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's all we have for tonight. It was an absolute pleasure and honor to have Dr. Shakil on the show. That brings us to the end of the show today. Until next time, take good care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.